The worst assignment in the Battle of Gate 7 was escort duty for the supply lines. No glory, no engagements, no combat record. Admiral Srex of the Velothian Navy gave it to the human fleet without hesitation, the simplest job for the least proven force. Captain Aisha Mwangi accepted the orders, thanked the Admiral, and returned to her ship. What Admiral Srex didn't know was that Aisha had spent 3 weeks before the battle studying Gate 7's approach vectors, asteroid field patterns, and gravimetric data. What he didn't know was that her crew had run 17 simulations of worst-case supply disruption scenarios. The human fleet's operational doctrine placed emphasis on contingency planning across multiple layers of uncertainty. Rather than optimizing only for assigned objectives, their training incorporated adaptive responses to unassigned threats, situations that fell outside standard engagement profiles. This approach required additional preparation time, but it expanded readiness beyond the expected parameters of a single mission type. When the enemy launched a surprise strike specifically targeted at coalition supply lines, a move no one had anticipated, the human fleet was the only force in position. They had not detected the attack through conventional intelligence channels. There were no intercepted communications, no confirmed enemy buildup along that vector, no early warning from allied sensors. Instead, their positioning and response protocols had been established in advance as part of their simulation exercises. Among the 17 scenarios they had rehearsed were variants involving supply line disruption under conditions of minimal warning and indirect engagement pressure. In several of those simulations, the supply routes were targeted as a primary objective rather than a secondary one. Because of that preparation, the human fleet maintained coverage across the critical transit corridors even while operating under escort designation. Their formations were not static. They were layered with redundancy, allowing rapid redistribution of assets when an anomaly appeared in the sensor network. When the enemy strike materialized, the response was immediate. Alert systems flagged irregular movement patterns at the edge of the engagement perimeter. Human command elements cross-referenced the data against their pre-modeled disruption scenarios and identified the attack profile within moments. Command decisions followed in a tightly coordinated sequence. Escort vessels repositioned to reinforce vulnerable segments of the supply chain. Interceptors were deployed along predicted enemy ingress vectors. Support ships adjusted their shielding and logistical output to maintain uninterrupted flow of critical materials. The enemy's objective depended on isolating and breaking the supply lines. The human fleet's preparation ensured that isolation could not occur. The supply lines held. Across the broader battlefield, the stability of the supply chain had a cascading effect. Coalition forces retained sustained operational capacity, preventing the degradation of frontline units that would have resulted from logistical collapse. Enemy forces, unable to achieve their primary disruption goal, were forced into less efficient engagement patterns, reducing the effectiveness of their coordinated assault. In the aftermath, analysts reviewing the engagement noted that the surprise attack had not been anticipated by coalition intelligence as a whole, but it had been accounted for within the human fleet's internal planning framework. Not as a certainty, as a possibility worth preparing for. During the debrief, Admiral Srex asked her, "How did you know?" "I didn't, sir," Aisha said. "I just prepared for the possibility that we'd need to be more than escorts." She paused. "We were given the worst assignment. I decided to make it the most important one." Srex looked at his tactical map for a long time. The supply routes remained intact. The battle outcome had shifted decisively in favor of the coalition not because of superior numbers or firepower alone, but because a critical vulnerability had been reinforced in advance by the only force positioned and prepared to respond to it. Escort duty, in its traditional interpretation, had been treated as a secondary role. In practice, it had functioned as the backbone of operational continuity. Srex reviewed the assignment records again. At the next fleet assignment meeting, he gave the human fleet the first assignment. Not as a reward, but as an acknowledgement. Because in Gate 7, the lesson had become clear. The importance of a role is not defined by how it is labeled in planning documents, but by how it performs when conditions deviate from expectations. And the humans had prepared for deviation. Please follow my channel for more videos. One click from you can change my life.